Good morning, everybody. This is Tom at Talent Guitar Works. I'm a repair facility in Southwest Florida, right between Englewood and Port Charlotte. And today I want to talk about one of the biggest myths in the electric guitar industry, and that's capacitors. These guys right here, capacitors. You'll have different people tell you different things about capacitors that are completely untrue. I have heard that oil-filled capacitors last much longer than a ceramic capacitor will. Okay, this is the first myth. Now, capacitors don't wear out like that in an electric guitar. And the reason is, all these capacitors are rated in volts DC, and a guitar works off of millivolts. So you're not going to see a blistered capacitor inside a guitar unless that guitar was in a fire. It's just that simple. That's the way it is. And a lot of the sites that will tell you that you need an oil-filled capacitor also sell those capacitors. It all started back with the Bumblebee capacitors that were in the Gibson Les Pauls, and everybody had to have a Bumblebee capacitor. And if you didn't have a Bumblebee capacitor in your guitar sucked, and so did you. And you needed to have one of those. Well, somebody gave me a Bumblebee about 6 years ago, and I noticed an anomaly on it, so I took my X-Acto knife out and carefully removed the outer cover. And what there was another label underneath it. So somebody printed out a bunch of Bumblebee labels and wrapped some generic capacitors with Bumblebee labels to sell them to unsuspecting guitar players so they could sound good and not suck. Hey, it's the way it goes. Slash and the guy from Alice in Chains were on there saying, you know, the industry hooks us in an endless chase for tone where we have to buy everything to see if it's going to improve our tone. Well, capacitance can improve your tone, but the way that it does it in this sense is it filters out low frequency. So the capacitors that are used for guitars generally are measured in microfarads, and that's that funny looking U with the tail and lowercase f. It's not ultrafarads. I've had people ask me about ultrafarads, and I go, microfarads, and they agree. Now, I have one of these passive circuit testers, and these are also used on the floor of the Gibson factory. Now, these things aren't cheap. And I've had mine for about 10 years, and I love it, and I've put about 12 batteries in it. But I can check the circuit or the components of the circuit for a guitar before I even install them. And I check the capacitance, because one of the claims is that the oil-filled, more expensive capacitors have less of a variance of what's printed on the label. Yeah, no. One of the things I have seen is one of my buddies bought a whole bunch of capacitors that not only were the wrong shape and labeled with the wrong information on them, so they had to go through and check every single capacitor that came in that order, and I want to say they ordered about 150 that one day. So check your capacitors. You can check them with a multimeter to find out what the capacitance is of them. And the only way a capacitor is going to go bad in an electric guitar is if you're twisting and torquing to get that into the cavity and you're trying to get it below the pick guard so it's inside the route and not up on the body of the guitar, you could break one of the leads. Now, if you do have a bad capacitor, the easiest way to tell that is your tone pot now works as a second volume pot. It no longer has capacitance, it's just another volume. So that's one way to find out. Now, when you play after you change the capacitance, 0.022 rolls off or allows more treble through than 0.033, than 0.047, respectively. So when you check your guitar, if you went from 0.022 to 0.033 or 0.031 or 0.047, don't check it with the tone pot rolled to 10. Check it with the tone pot rolled to 0. If the guitar sounds super muddy with the tone pot rolled to 0, you need a lower number. So if you were at 0.047 and when you rolled your guitar to 0, the tone pot, and it sounds like garble, then go to 0.022. See if that cleans it up, if it sounds a little bit better low. It's really hard to tell where you are on those high ranges for the tone pot. Real easy to tell on the low range if it's bad or not. You really don't hear people say, it sounds tinny. You hear people say it sounds muddy though, a lot. So that's the way to check it once you have it installed in your guitar. But the capacitance works in conjunction with the pickups and with the volume in the tone pots to give you the sound you want. And if you're crafting the tone you want, that's one of the things you have to look at. And you have to look at like things in Stratocasters where they have single capacitors or double capacitors in the wiring circuit. So any capacitor you use, if it's rated and if you've checked it and it's checking out at that rating, will be fine. Don't spend a lot of money on it. So anyway, this is Tom from Talent Guitar Works. Only half my ideas are any good. You got to decide which half.